is your spouse's debt your debt? And
Mm.
when did you guys talk about that said debt together? Like, was it ever a conversation like, hey, before we get married, we got to tackle this debt? Did you have to make sure you're on the same page? What do you say to people that are maybe dating and getting pretty serious and one's the saver and one's a spender, or one person cash flowed their school and their spouse maybe didn't, and they're kind of like where's that gray area for you, and what talk did you have with your spouse? Because me personally, we never we were married and down the road before we started talking about debt. So like I didn't care what kind of debt she
Right,
had.
right.
We combined our finances instantly when we got married. I think that was something that was pretty important to us. But did you guys discuss the student loan debt before marriage, or how'd you guys handle that?
Oh, we're getting on a touchy subject here. This is good though, because this is the stuff that doesn't really get talked about much, marriage and money and all that. This is stuff that's very important, especially for newer couples out there who are maybe engaged at this point in time or thinking about engagement and getting ready to get that next step of becoming married. To answer your question first, yes, Lindsay and I did talk about money. We talked about our situations, our debts. I would say I'm not anywhere near I was whenever I was in college and Lindsay and I were dating to where I am now, like financially stable and the knowledge I knew. Like back in college, I just was all about drinking beer and passing my classes. That's really all I cared about. Like I said, I've always been that natural saver, but still, it was one of those things where I didn't see it as that big a deal.
Right.
But once Lindsay and I started getting serious around my senior year or junior year of college, we started talking about all those things:
Okay.
religion, money, how we're going to raise our kids, and to all of the newly engaged couples out there, I think that is something you have to talk about.
Yeah.
You have to. Now, can it work if it doesn't get talked about? Yes, but I think you are much better off if you bring it up before the marriage happens. Because some of you may not think religion's important or anything like that. And if both spouses, the man and wife or whoever, wife and wife, whatever it is, if you got to figure out what works for both of you. But as far as religion, finances go, it's all about opening up the discussion and seeing what the other person thinks and kind of seeing where their thoughts are, where they're at, what their goals and aspirations are. So, yes, Lindsay and I did talk about finances, and we knew all we each other had was our debts. Luckily, Lindsay was also a natural born saver, I guess. She
Okay.
was a kind of a frugal gal as well. So it worked well for us. We meshed well that on that aspect. But it was more of, I guess it was just talked about, but it was never really a big conversation until we got married,
Right.
got our big girl, big boy jobs, and we're like, okay, now what do we do?
What I hear too, and that's super important if people aren't picking up on it, is the fact that it's the talking, it's the communication that's really the big deal. Like if you're getting serious with somebody and they have a ton of student loan debt or they have a car debt, that shouldn't, the debt itself, I don't think personally should ever be a deal breaker. I think it's more of the communication about that debt. Because you
Mhm.
have debt doesn't make you a bad person. I see so many people chastised because they have debt. Like I had 189,000. We'll get to my story in a second, but I don't think I had that because I was a bad person. Maybe I was just financially illiterate. So you might be getting serious with somebody that maybe just is a little bit financially illiterate, and you just need to have that conversation. It's more about the conversation than the debt piece.
Now, let me flip that on you real quick, Brad.
Go.
What would you say to somebody who has had those conversations with a significant other and they're just not on board financially? They're saying, I'm going to have debt the rest of my life. I'm always going to have a car payment. I'm not worried about paying off my student loans. But then you have the girl or guy that is the soon to be spouse, or maybe they're not engaged yet. Maybe they're just dating. What would you say to that? Because I've had this question pop up a few times, and it's a tough one, to be honest, man. It's really hard.
I think it definitely gets into a personal situation. It's easy from the outside to be like that could be a deal breaker,
Right,
but
right.
but every rose has a thorn, right? And some people can put up with certain things and there might be compromise. I mean, I've very close friends where I don't think both of them are on the same page as far as money. And do they have an amazing relationship? Yes. Are they great parents? Yes. Are they great friends and brothers? Yes. It doesn't make you a bad person because you have debt. I would say to somebody though that at least needs to be a deal that breaker that could potentially ruin it because it hurts and it sucks to take somebody that you love right now that might have a major issue to you. But I can tell you it would suck, at least in my opinion, I think it would suck a lot more if you let it fester for 5 years, 10 years, you brought in kids, and then it becomes a situation where you don't know what the heck is going on.
It's better to nip it in the butt early than let it grow.
Yeah, and also too, maturity is a big deal too. Like
Yes.
when I was 22 years old and somebody would have been like, "Brad, no, you're not allowed to do that." Yeah, we might have broke up, which is probably why I didn't get married at 22 years old. I got married at 35 years old. Maybe call me immature if you want, but there's also that too. There's also like, all right, this isn't a deal breaker for our relationship, but maybe we're going to hold off on marriage for a couple years until maybe we start to see
Right.
in the same picture. I don't think like you have debt, you don't want to talk about it. We're breaking up. Like I don't think it
Yes,
needs to
yeah.
go that far.
I agree with you on that. I do want to touch on something too real quick is I think you need to know yourself also. Like I think it's very important to understand what your beliefs are and kind of what's your deal breaker. Because maybe Brad back at 22, you weren't worried about it to where like someone like me, I'll be honest with you, like if I hate to say this, but I know myself and I know how I was back at 24 when Lindsay and I got married. I think I probably would have not been able to ask Lindsay to marry me if she wasn't decent with her finances because I know myself. I would not be able to sleep at night knowing that Lindsay and I were not on board financially because it just that I think it I mean I have to be honest here, that's a deal breaker for me.
Okay.
Um, that's why I think it's so important for you to know yourself and to know what you made a perfect point. You need to know what you can deal with,
Right.
and that would just be something I couldn't deal with. I think.